Well, I tried to fix the AC again. Unusual methods this time. Although they're logical methods, but, well, except for mine. I was trying to use a bike pump to pump the stuff out of the drain line, so. I did hear air go down the PVC pipe, so I don't know if that was an effective. I just tried it 3 times just to see. Then I went outside, and there was actually some gunk or something, some webbing or some kind of gunky algae or something. So I used a hanger wire, and I was jamming it up the pipe to see if I could unclog the deal, so the drain line in the air conditioning unit. So we'll see if any of those methods work. I'll know because the pan won't fill up with water to shut off the AC. So I'll know if it works, if the water doesn't fill up. I used a little some hot water, some bleach as well. So we'll see if any of these things what is sobriety? It's like the state of terrifying clarity of reality. That's the definition of sobriety. Or it could be sobriety also, another definition of it is abstaining from drugs or alcohol to get through life. Yeah. Or you can call sobriety also the terrifying realization of mortality and reality. So my mother and my aunt they took my grandma to meet her best friend, Kat, maybe with her daughter, in Livingston, Texas. Catherine Bridges, my grandmother's old best friend. Yeah, old best friend. Yeah, one of her. You know, when women, they said, oh, that's my girlfriend. When they still said, oh, that's my Well, my girlfriend, her, I would think that bitches keep better tabs, right? Bitches keep they keep the circles together better than men do. Because, men are competitors against each other in life. So men don't want to talk, the lions don't want to talk to the other lions. The lionesses, on the other hand, the hens want to talk in the hen house. So, not all. I mean, some women seem, like, stay out of my business. I don't want to have a lot of female friends. And then some, they get in the suburbs and they're like, oh, I want all these, female friends that are, in a similar position in life. So my mom was always something of a loner. She only cared about, the family and her husband, and she stayed true to that vision. And she did not try to share information with others. She did not try to expand her social group into, a whole bunch of, like, a league of suburban moms or anything like that, like some women do. But my aunt tried to have a posse for a while, a suburban mom posse for a little while thing. Yeah, I guess my mom's best friends were mostly like from her teenage years, and they, kept in touch off and on, but it wasn't like an ever presence with these people. One of her friends, Karen, had a lot of problems with drugs and stuff like that. So, and I guess our other friends moved on from middle school. But I'm sure there's some girls that keep the same girlfriends from, like, maybe high school, maybe college, all the way into, they keep the same bestie friend, maybe all the way until they're like, maybe like my grandma and her friend Catherine, all the way until they're old and dying. That's a pretty strong friendship throughout the years, I think. So when my parents bought this place 30 years ago, it was next door neighbor at first. It wasn't Phil and Ray Waters. It was kind of like the Ropers, another old couple. And they were nice people and everything. And then Phil and Ray Waters moved in here 2 years after we lived here. And they were really cool. And so we started hanging out more and more with Phil and Ray Waters. He was always been 50 years older than me. So I guess he was in his late 60s when I was 17. Yeah, now he's 92 years old. Yeah. So he was into computers, and he was a former merchant marine, and he would sail around the world, and he was working on diesel engines, and first it was steam engines, and then it was diesel engines. And then his wife didn't do a job. That I know of. And then he brought home the bacon, I guess. And they were retired, and they moved in next door. And then he set up his man cave, fixing computers, and that was his hobby, computers. Even though he wasn't a computer scientist, he was a ship's engineer on the diesel engines and the ship's functions. But computers and technology were like his, his passion as he was retired. Like that was his hobby. I guess Phil and Ray were both kind of alcoholics, but I guess usually neighbors don't offer free alcohol all the time. Hey, come on. But I think it was because, he was real lonely and stuff. And, yeah, I think he was married. He had a daughter, and he had a daughter-in-law, and he had all this family, and, from his wife's side, Ray. But, yeah, he just seemed like a really lonely man. And he was always like, hey, come over and have a beer, have a beer, have a beer, and have a scotch, hang out. He just wanted somebody to talk to, because that wasn't his wife, and that wasn't his, usual circle, I guess. He just wanted to drink and just sit around talking, that sort of thing. And people really enjoyed his company because he was a really nice guy. His wife's daughter had worked for Atari in its heyday, and made some big money in Atari. Of course, Atari was the leader in arcades and video game home consoles for a while, until Nintendo knocked him out, and the Atari Corporation went defunct after a bunch of bad business decisions and so on. So, but it was cool while it lasted. But sometimes, a lot of times in the technological or business world, another competitor comes along and knocks your ass out off the perch and makes something better, which is the nature of capitalism. So it's the competition and the making the better product that overtakes your rivals and beats them. Or at least that's the idea, the essential idea of capitalism. It's competition which creates prosperity. In theory, anyway, that's what it's supposed to do. They didn't sit around and get drunk all the time. Obviously, they did other things. So it's not like they just sat around, like just wasted their whole retirement. But there was definitely no rules. Like you could have a glass of wine early in the morning and a cigarette, and nobody was going to hound you over there. If you stayed until 4 in the morning drinking scotch and beer, no one really batted an eye over there at you. And so, alcoholics or just enjoying life, as long as it wasn't interfering with their, duties and responsibilities, I guess, it was their lifestyle, Phil had invested a lot in Enron, an energy company in Houston. He was so into technology, and he was so much into the future. And when you're in the late 90s in America, you think the 21st century is going to be incredible. So you're like all abuzz with all this like pouring all this, like you're sopping with optimism. And a lot of the elderly people with their money, they're like, well, what are we going to do with our retirement savings? Just sit on it? Why don't we invest in Enron, this new energy company? It looks like it's this big player. It looks like this Enron thing is going to take off. Oh man, it didn't. Oh shit. Yeah. All these people lost their jobs, and it was a big fucking Ponzi scheme, Enron. So unfortunately, Phil and Ray, they lost a lot of their savings, and so they probably just got by on whatever was left after the fallout of the Enron energy Ponzi scheme scam in the early 2000s. And yeah, but Phil was an optimist. I guess you could say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as the old saying goes. So, I mean, if you have a lot of elderly people, they're like, well, I could be dead in 10 years. And they got a lot of money. They've been working their whole lives. And they're like, oh, I got thousands of dollars. I want to invest in something, you know? I want to invest in something that's going to pay me even more money. Yeah, I'm doing okay now. And I could ride this money out until I'm dead. But what if I could make a score, a fucking killing? What if I could amplify what I already have into even a greater fortune, a greater lifestyle? You know, maybe a boat. Maybe I can have a lakeside, riverside, oceanside house. Maybe I can, you know, I like to go to the Alley Theater. I like to go to the Symphony sometimes. What if I can go to the Symphony all the time? What if, you know, I can go see more concerts? What if I had more money? I could do more things. I could live it up to the absolute fullest if I was a wealthy man, a really wealthy man, and a really wealthy family. I could be... Think of the things I could be and the things I could do. I guess that's the idea. That's the dream, you know. Yeah, Phil was a very nice man. He's still a very nice man. He's still alive. But he was real gullible. You know, he didn't really... I mean, he was the perfect guy that you would want to... Like a Ponzi scheme like Enron would pick for that kind of elderly investor who was itching for... They got a good life, but they want a better good life. And so I think those are the people the criminals are really looking for, right? The people that have money, but they're itching for the next level of money, the next level of lifestyle. Now, when I hit 40, it was the pandemic, and that's a different kind of rock bottom. The plague and me hitting 40 in 2020, and the Joe Biden, the theft of the election, that's a different kind of rock bottom than someone that was turning 40, like my mother and my stepdad and my aunt at the beginning of the 21st century. So they were hitting 40 kind of in an optimistic feeling, but they were having a midlife crisis. So when they hit 40, they were like, well, this is it. Just go to work, have a spouse and have a kid. And they're just kind of like, hey, why don't we? You know, I'm having a midlife crisis. So my dad buys a red candy apple Corvette. My aunt goes skydiving and my mom goes skydiving. You know, maybe go to some wild parties, some wild vacations. So they kind of have a midlife crisis, you know. Maybe experiment, dab with a little antidepressants. Prozac was being pushed like candy back at the time by the pharmaceutical industry. It's like, so my midlife crisis rock bottom was a little bit different than the baby boomer one, you know. So through talking with Phil and Ray, apparently they had they recognized that my mother's My grandmother, Ida Lou Circe, Iris, as she's better known as, they realized that they had in Pasadena, Texas, on Park Place and Old Galveston Road, that in the late 70s, that Phil and Ray had lived in that apartments, and that Kat was the landlord, and then Kat was my grandmother's best friend, and that they used to have parties all the time. No, it was basically Phil would go out on these merchant marine sailing across the world, being the ship's engineer, mostly on graveyard shifts. And then when he'd come back to port in Houston, then he would want to party. He'd want to celebrate when he was off work. So he liked to get all the community together and have these barbecues and drinking and have good times and laughs and get people together. He liked those big social parties. And then so Kat was the landlord of Phil and Ray. And I guess my grandma went to a few of the parties. She wasn't really a partier. She might have just grandma was not a partier, even though she's Irish and all that, but so that was a strange connection, that we are connected, almost fated to these people in a weird way. So, well, they do say you're connected to people by 6 degrees of separation, whether people like it or not. So you're always 6 degrees separated from other people. So people might try to hide information from me. They think, oh, well, as long as Scott doesn't know, that's fine, or whatever. And then somebody will tell me, their mother died, and maybe they didn't want me to know the information, but it's still 6 degrees of separation from every other person. So I could just do something random, and I'll meet somebody that I know or I have known if I live long enough, and the person will say, oh, hey, how are you? And then they'll say, oh, Billy's mom died. And I'll go, oh. And I haven't been talking to Billy or anything. Billy maybe didn't want to know that wanted me to know that his mom died. But now, Teresa told me, because we randomly met in the Walmart. That's the key structure. That's the crux of the 6 degrees of separation. Is that everybody's all connected by 6 degrees. I like that social theory, actually. Is it true? Well, if you're trying to hide information about people and you want to keep it secret, well, there's always some kind of loose end, It's kind of like the plague. Everybody tries to stay 6 feet away from other people and to try to stop the spread of the COVID. The Chinese Communist Wuhan plague, or the Wuhan Virology Institute, China. But yeah, you could try to stay away from your mother, or your father, or your brother, or your children, or your sister, or your aunt, or your uncle. Yeah, you could try to mask up and hide yourself away. You could try to go live in a forest away from people. But somebody's going to know about you. Somebody's going to find you. Even Ted Kaczynski the Unabomber, tried to live in a log cabin out in the woods with no technology. And what did he do? Well, he wanted his manifesto published, and then his brother is the one who told the FBI, turn him in because of 6 degrees of separation. So people